And let's build the main roof form. And so I think what I'll do is I'll build it here, and then we'll kind of move it to the back and mirror it, and then we'll just pull the whole thing forward. All right, so it would appear what's happening with this roof pitch is if we were to come forward by roughly a foot, I would just make an assumption that, you know, it's gonna see how that would come forward to that point on the green, and then we would come down roughly to there, and then you come on the red. It's hard to understand, you know, exactly how that would work. So it's probably 8 inches out, you know, like 8 inches on the red. And I don't know, sometimes it's easier just to start blocking out shapes. And like, you know, is that the form? Not exactly. So let's get rid of this. You know, we'll kind of scoot this over here. So it's like a dance between tracing and guessing. So maybe that. Let me see if I'm even doing this right. Yeah, that's probably what would happen. So that means that this overhang here, we've got it drawn at like 14 inches, which it's hard for me to tell what's going on. So let's go back to our photographs and, you know, zoom in and maybe go to the next one. That's gonna be a help. So we don't really get a good shot. We're gonna assume that these two are right in line, but we're gonna look at this to set our rule. And yeah, I mean, you know, 14 inches, that's probably not that far off. So it just kind of drops, goes over, and then let's go back to our photograph here. And so now we would need to pull this piece and this piece, and yeah. So that's really what's going to happen, all right? So we'll use our line tool, and I'll just go kind of straight up, and then we're going to use, let's see, how can I do like a super intense inference here? I wonder if I can do that. We'll kind of go up here, match that point, go straight up like that. Control E, kill my guides, like that. And then I'm going to take this whole thing, and I might just group it right now. You can right click and choose make group, and then move it to the back like that. And the reason I'm moving it to the back is because then I can flip it and mirror it over here, and then I can pull the whole thing out and kind of build the whole roof in one shot rather than just building half. So I have a plugin called Mirror. If I right click on any tool, any button or toolbar, and I can bring up the mirror toolbar. And so let me pull that off my other screen. And so this mirror, I can just activate it, and you kind of set the line of symmetry like 2 different clicks. And I don't want to erase the original like that. All right, so now I'm going to take both of these guys, I'm going to group them, so G, and then explode the whole thing. Like now I'm inside of that group, so I can hide the rest of my model. That's under View, Component, Edit, Hide Rest of Model. Control H is my shortcut. I use that all the time. So Hide Rest of Model makes it really easy to just toggle in between and keep geometry separated. All right, so now I need to pull this thing out like that. All right, and I don't know that we made a true decision on how far out this overhang is, but we'll leave it there for now. Use our line tool, go straight up. So activate your line tool. Let me do that again because this is kind of important. So I want to now split this surface so I can mirror it. So I'll tap, click to start my line, tap the up arrow key, and all I got to do is put my cursor anywhere on this roof, and that's going to constrain on line intersect plane. All right, and then with my select tool, I'm going to run another mirror like this, and we're not going to erase that. And so now I've got like this other piece over here. And so maybe I'll hide the rest of my model and clean this up. And if I just pull this forward, pull this one and pull this one, we can then start to clean it up. And then we'll bring this one out to the front like that. So we're in good shape like that. And let's just look at our photograph real quick and make an assumption. I'd say that's like maybe an 8-inch overhang or extension, you know, like from here to here. Well, I guess you can see it much clearer. It's like a foot. And I don't know that it's the same as the 14, but it looks like it's about a foot. So let's do this. Let's go, let's see, can I get back in here and then use my push-pull tool and pull it out, and I'm just eyeballing it. And you can see that, you know, it's showing up in my measurements dialog box at the bottom right as more like 18 inches. I don't know. I'll go with it. Call it 18 inches. And how did we pan out up here? I think it's a little too far. And so maybe instead of 18, let's just go with our 14 and just, you know, you get to a point where you've used the photograph enough, you know, you've gotten the massing down, and at some point you want to kind of get away from using that photograph to make these decisions, and you just start using, you know, the rules that you're setting up. And so I can use my push-pull tool, double click into my group, of course, use my push-pull tool and double click, and that'll give me the exact same push-pull over there. And I can even orbit around and do it again like that. So now we've got our roof line all set up, and we'll worry about that backyard later. So this is all good. You know, this is going to make a nice clean rendering. And we're going to leave that alone right now. And I guess what we should do is set up our roof line. So maybe I'll set a guide here and then throw another guide right there and then rotate that guide. I tap my up arrow key. I can constrain it on blue, rotate it by 90, maybe move that guide right there. So just kind of setting up those rules. And I do remember saying that, like, you know, this is roughly 6 inches over, but let's go back to our photo and see, you know, like, I think that this needs to start right there and probably pull this down like that, and then we'll do an offset, because that's kind of you know, I don't think that's a ceiling. Let's see, let's look at it. So yeah, I wish I had a little better photographs, but we'll get by. You know, you just look for these clues. So you can see, you know, this goes around the perimeter, and then you can kind of reach up under there. So you know, we'll get that sorted out. That's kind of what I thought was happening. And we can do that now. Yeah, why not? So I'll just use my select tool. I selected that, and then I'll use Control Shift and remove that stuff from my selection. And then we're just going to offset from here to here. You know, I eyeballed it, and I guess, you know, I'll leave it alone. I mean, you could make some assumptions that, like, you know, this is probably, I don't know, like, how would they frame that? You know, it's a couple 2x, so maybe it's like 6 inches thick, something like that. So I've got it at like 10 right now. So maybe I'll just dial back that previous decision like that, and you know, maybe do something like this just to keep it the same. And this is that battle between being perfect and making a geo model that nobody's ever going to measure, you know? All right, so now my guides are kind of messed up, so let me get this back in place. So that goes up there. Yeah. Yeah, see, you got to just kind of run with what you got. So let's just do this. I'm going to leave this guy right here, and we'll come back and fix that. You got to ignore this offset here. And it comes up, and then, you know, you gotta imagine that this comes up, and it's not gonna be that thick, that's for sure. So like, let's push this down like this. This part, you know, does something probably more. It is kind of strange the way the trim and everything lined up. So we'll do something like that. And let me use my move tool, and I'm going to move this guide kind of in place there. All right, and then we'll orbit. So this triangle here, this triangle right here, this is, you know, I've plotted it in space. I clear my guides, and you gotta let go and move on, and not make it any more perfect than this. I think it's all good where it's at. So maybe I would pull this forward over here, and you know, you might also consider, do we want this piece to be its own thing, so that we can kind of work on it by itself? I think the answer is yes. So I'm just gonna right now break this apart, and you know, use my select tool, holding control, make it into a group, and then I'm gonna hide the rest of my model. And you know, I can clean up that group. I can use my line tool and you know, turn it into kind of a solid here. Get rid of some of these. We'll come back to that. All right, so now we have like this chunk here, we have this chunk here, and you know, we can extrude this just a little bit further even, you know, just because you want it to kind of get all the way over and kind of close that gap, which I was hoping I would get a snap there. So let me make sure that I'm getting what I want. Pull this, yep, there we go. So now it's, you know, meets right there perfectly. And then we got to apply these kind of same rules to it. So good there. Reverse my faces, Control E to clear my guides. And so now, you know, this is going to need a thickness of, you know, and we use the same roof pitch, so that's good. Let's go back to our match photo. And so what I'm thinking is I'm just going to pull like this chunk of roof, and then I'm going to put it right here, and then we're going to extrude it. And I think that's going to, you know, apply the exact same rules rather than trying to rebuild this piece. All right, so I'll just go over here, and I will use my select tool, double click in, break the surface, or you know, you could even just make a copy of it first and copy it, whatever, on the red is fine. Use my line tool to divide these, and then I'll use my select tool, and I use this a lot. I group it and then I delete it, and then I'm going to rotate this, tap the up arrow key, and we're going to rotate that on the blue axis by 90. Reverse my faces, and then place this, you know, that goes right there, I think. So yeah, that, I mean, I think that makes sense. So let's see. Let's go back to our match photo. So if I were to pull this out by, yeah, I mean, it looks like 14 kind of gets us where we're supposed to be. So I'll just type 14, and we'll ride with that. And then go this way. Oh, and why am I not getting, oh yeah, okay. So you see how this kind of breaks through. I need to just trim this up. So you're always wanting to snap to points, and then you can get rid of that. And then we're going to pull this back through like this. And so maybe I would go, you know, right to that face. And then up here, I would just consider making, you know, kind of breaking this thing up into what it's supposed to be. So if I want like the bottom face to be a solid, you know, like now we've got that piece. And it looks like, yeah, I actually have these pieces kind of in the same container. So let me break these apart a little bit And it's always good to do this early, as in like if I had just made that first surface into a group, I wouldn't be up against this. All right, let's just undo it and I'll show you. Like right here, you know, like this very first surface, if I had just made this a group, it's so much easier to make that a group and then start working, you know. So now you got your 14 and then you can pull it this way and snap it here. And now everything doesn't kind of join up together. And then if you remember right, I have to break this and then peel this back like that. All right, and then we're gonna go with our line tool and I'll fill in these and then I'll fill in this one like that. And what I'm doing here is like, you know, I'm using my inferences. So if I tap like the right arrow key, I'm locked. And if I want to snap to the plane, I just put my cursor right here, anywhere on this plane, and then I can connect the dots. So you're just plotting points in space. All right, right there and right there. And then I can trim that up. And then I would probably, I'm a sucker for perfectly clean models. So I don't know, I just usually kind of make sure that everything is just so not critical, but man, does it help if things are clean. And that, you know, this one, I don't know. I mean, I could see it both ways as to whether, you know, whether we try to carve that out. So I'm good with where we're at. 14 seems a little strong on that one, but that's all good. All right, so we've got the general form of the house set up. That's in good shape. You know, that's kind of the idea of geomodeling, is using that photograph, gathering those context clues, plotting those points, filling in the blanks, you know, finding a rule on one side of the house and then applying it to the other side. That is what geomodeling is all about. And we use this technique all the time for, you know, you can imagine if you're creating a landscape plan, you don't want to have to measure the whole house, but you want it to look like the house. So this is a great way to get a really accurate representation of the house without having to measure it. So we also use this to create like context buildings. You can sometimes like find images from Google Earth or Street View and use those for not exactly what I did here, but just to kind of paint onto a surface, make some assumptions. So the next step here is going to be to chip away some more detail. We've got this clay model. We've got like a nice beginning to it, but we need to start adding in some windows and doors and also the brick ledges. So let's get to it. If you like this video, click the BD button to subscribe to our channel. Every week we post new videos covering SketchUp, Layout, Lumion, and our Condoc Tools extension. If you are a professional architect or interior designer, you're going to love our tutorials.